Hey, what's going on? It's Nick again. I've got the Monte Carlo home. I've got the jack and jack stands. We're going to be throwing it up in the air. So I will do that real quick and then we'll kind of walk through what we're going to do. All right, so I got the Monte Carlo up in the air here. We got the jack stands on the frame on the GMA bodies, which is like your Monte Carlos, your Chevelles, Buick Skylarks, Oldsmobile Cutlasses. There is a frame cross member, bridges one side of the frame rail to the other side of the frame rail. It's a very solid point. You could just jack it right up from there and then put your jack stands on the frame rails. I went for the disco purple for the showroom because I thought that was fun. So I'll show you here what we're gonna do. So I got all the tools that I should need, my hodgepodge of carry around stuff. I got the coilovers in here. We've got our jack, which we will eventually need. We're gonna take the wheel off first. We'll take both sides off. We're gonna unbolt the existing shock, which the bolt is actually inside, right there, inside the engine compartment. And the other one down in there, next to the air conditioning, a little tough to see. By the way, I got the air cleaner lid flipped for the extra horsepower and extra sound. We'll go ahead, we'll take the wheels off and we'll pop back in a second and show you the next steps. All right, so we got the wheels off, both of them, and we'll show you basically how we're gonna do this. So we've got the upper control arm here, the spindle assembly, which is what the brake rotor, caliper, and everything kind of gets mounted to. We've got our sway bar right here, sway bar end links, which is what connects it to the control arm. And you can see that these are just completely blown out. We've got our coil spring, which is going to be part of what's replaced. And then inside here, the shock absorber, which is the other part that'll be replaced. And then we've got the lower control arm down here. So what we're going to do is we'll unbolt, if we can, as long as this doesn't break. We're going to unbolt the sway bar end link so that the sway bar comes disconnected from the control arm. And then we're going to disconnect the lower ball joint here, and then we'll just smack the snot out of the control arm to try and get that loose. Once we get that loose, this is going to drop down, which will allow us to remove both the spring and the shock absorber inside there, and we'll be able to replace it with our complete assembly from QA1. You do want to be careful. This spring is under a lot of tension, so there's a couple things you could do to make it safer. The spring is kind of contained by the shock absorber here, so when we let the tension off, it shouldn't just shoot out at us, but it is still a possibility. Some people will slip a chain through here and chain it around the backside of the control arm just so that it's, all kind of tied together so it doesn't bounce out or anything. Like I said, with the design that we've got here, the shock kind of acts as a restrictor so that it can't come all the way out. But the way that we'll do it is we will remove, let's see if I can get it here. We will remove the castle nut, or the cotter pin, loosen the castle nut so that we could pop that ball joint loose. Then we're going to use the floor jack to support the weight from the bottom of the control arm. And that way we can completely remove the castle nut and use the jack as a way to control the lowering speed of the control arm, the lower control arm, so that the spring doesn't just immediately release all of its energy. It's going to be a slow release of energy so that the spring shouldn't shoot out, damage anything, or hurt me. So I will start getting myself all set up here and I'll show you how we do it. All right, so one little tip I forgot to mention is if you turn the wheel all the way one way full lock, you get a little bit more space. So you can see we've got the sway bar end link removed, and I've got the castle nut just loose but still fully bolted on. That's really all you're looking for. We don't have to take it all the way off to try and crack this loose. And then I'm going to turn the wheel all the way to the opposite lock because we've got all the steering linkage and everything on the front and this side, and on the back we'll have better access. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to swing, try and aim for basically the bottom of the ball joint, or the bottom of the spindle. You want to try and hit the spindle if you can, and it's going to shock the ball joint where it'll loosen up. It's a tapered seat, so it just kind of needs to get rattled loose, and then the spring will provide the pressure to push down. Now I don't know how crusty your car is compared to mine, but having a torch on hand makes a world of difference in trying to get that loosened up. So just something to keep in mind. Some of this stuff like the sway bar end links, that came apart without much fighting, but silly little things like the cotter pin actually fell apart while I was yanking it out. So you want to make sure that you've got consumable things like that on hand. Some of that will get destroyed upon removal. You have to kind of take that into account. Now, a lot of this stuff I'm not super worried about. I am going to do a cotter pin, but some of the other things like the bump stop here is completely destroyed. And like I said, the sway bar end links, these are bushings are basically shot. I'm going to throw these back on. They really should be replaced. But I am going to be doing tubular upper control arms at a later date, and I will be doing tubular lower control arms at a later date as well. I'll definitely be doing bigger sway bars and poly sway bar end links when I do the bigger sway bars, but for now I'm not super worried about it. I just want to get this sitting up high enough that the car is not chewing itself apart every time I try and go full lock. As you can see, I had to cut back this side quite a bit because it had broken loose and was basically just kind of dragging along on the tire. So that needed to be done. But anyways, back to this. So again, you want to try and hit the spindle right on the bottom to try and shock loose the ball joint so that that pops down, and then we'll go through the next steps. All right, so I was hammering away at this spindle for a while and I couldn't get it loose. So I ended up grabbing a pickle fork, just kind of wedge it between the ball joint and the lower portion of the spindle. I don't usually like to do that, only because it will tear up the boot, but the boot on this was already torn, and like I said, I'm going to end up replacing these anyways, so I'm not terribly worried about it. I went ahead, I set the jack up underneath the control arm. I'm probably going to reposition it a little bit better there, but the next step is I'm going to go ahead and remove the castle nut here, and then up on the top side I'm going to remove the upper shock nut right there, and then we'll go ahead and start lowering that down and we'll be ready to pull the old stuff out. Well, I ran into a little hiccup, so I figured I'd show you. The top nut on the strut here was just basically spinning. I couldn't get it to go. I was trying to hit it with the impact. Wasn't going. So what I have done in the past, and I learned this from a friend of mine a long time ago, is you take the socket and you put it on the nut. I'm not going to do it here. Oh, you know what? It grabbed. I'll do it. And sorry, I got to get a tripod or something. So what you do is you bend it towards, one side of the car or the other. Try not to rip your AC lines. And you basically just rock it back and forth. Just see if I can get this to turn a little bit here. I might have to set the phone down. There we go. All right. So you spin it 180 degrees, and now it's trying to lean the other way. You bring it forwards again, spin it 120, bring it forwards again, and what we're doing is fatiguing the metal. Sorry for the loud noises. We're fatiguing the metal. Whoops, did it break already? That would have been a lot quicker than the other one. But we're fatiguing the metal to a point where we can get it to snap off. This one did not yet snap off. Try that again. See if I can get that to bite. There we go. Doesn't even matter so much which direction you're bending it, so long as you are bending it back and forth opposite directions. And so what I've got here again is the socket. That's the correct size for the bolt, or the nut rather. And then I'm just pivoting it 180 degrees. Oh, and there it goes. So now, let's see that it's gone. You just got the washer and the bushing. So now I don't have to fight with that one anymore. But so on this side now, we've got the upper mounting point of the strut is disconnected. I've got the castle nut for the lower ball joint disconnected. And so what we're going to do now, I've got this sitting under the tension of the jack, and so we're just going to try and slowly let that down. And there ought to be nothing else holding the lower control arm up. unless I forgot something, which is very possible. Should be able to just kind of pop that down. I guess it's not feeling that yet, so there's something else that must be binding. I might have to try and pry the lower. Yeah, I think that's it. We're just gonna pry this out. Well, I'll fight with this so you don't have to watch me try and do this one-handed. All right, so I got it loose. It was actually just stuck on the brake backing plate, so that's something you got to be aware of. Go ahead and lower the jack slowly, or attempt to. You can see that spring is coming down. You can hear it popping and creaking as it goes. And there we go. Now I will try and disconnect the lower points on the shock, get that spring out, and we'll get ready to put the new stuff in. All right, so I got the spring out there. I had to cut off the bottom bolts of the shock and then cut the back side of the bolts off of them because they were just they were stuck. Short answer, they were stuck, and they were basically just spinning around in the bottom of the control arm, so there was no way to get it out without cutting it, which unfortunately took a lot of time. So I am running out of light, so we'll have to cook through the rest of this. I did pull the parts off to the side over here. So we've got obviously the most important part of any new parts is some stickers. So we'll find a place to put those on the toolbox or something. We've got I believe they call that a thrust washer. They recommend an upgrade to thrust bearings, which I didn't do because I am cheap. But that's the thrust washer that comes with the shock. They do also require, for warranty purposes, let's see, first we'll just take the spring out of the box and then I'll get back to that. So there's the new coil spring. If judging by looks alone, it's going to be much better than the old coil spring. There's the old shock as well. And so anyways, back to what I was saying about warranty, is in order to be able to keep a warranty on the brand new parts, you are required to add some anti-seize to the threads to prevent galling. So I went ahead and did that already. Oh, look at that, I already got a nice little smear. I was trying to avoid that. Oh well. And then we take a locking collar there and go ahead and thread that on first, and then we thread the spring perch on, and then we will put the thrust washer, and then we will put the coil spring on, and then all of that will seat up into the factory spring pocket. You do want to make sure that you double check that it is indexed correctly. It's supposed to sit in a specific position in there, and then once that's in, we will set the shock in, bolt the shock in with the supplied hardware that we've got here, and then we will have to throw a guesstimate on where we want the height to be. We've got the upper bushings here. Technically what you were supposed to do is you're supposed to measure from the ground to the fender, and then when you put the vehicle up, you measure the ground to fender again, figure out where you need it to be, and then adjust accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead, get this all assembled, slap it up in there, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so we ran out of sunlight here, but I got a flashlight, so we'll be good for a little bit here. So the bottom holes there on the lower control arm did have to be opened up with a 3/8 inch drill bit, but otherwise you just basically put the shock in exactly as the old shock came out. You've got the 2 bolts on the bottom there. The shock does sit on top of the control arm, not underneath the control arm. But you put the shock on, put the 2 bolts in. I have them bolts dropping in from the top rather than up from the bottom, which is how the factory was. That's just how I prefer it. I don't know if that's right or wrong. And then you've got the upper mount here. where you've got the bushing, the washer, and then there's two nuts. So one of them goes on and holds the shock on. The other one goes on as a locking nut, just to make sure that the main nut does not back off. So once that's all on, then we can throw the wheel on this side and we'll go to the other side. Now, one thing to note, and I goofed on this, I did not buy the spanner wrench necessary in order to adjust the collars here. Right now you can see that this is adjusted all the way down. So I'm kind of thinking this is going to end up sitting low enough to a point where it's either at where it was before or possibly lower. So it will probably be undrivable until I get that spanner wrench. So I know some guys will just take a screwdriver and a mallet and just knock it around whichever direction, you know, clockwise or counterclockwise, to make the adjustment that's needed. I do not want to destroy those, so I'm going to not do that. But if you're in a pinch and you need to make an adjustment, that is an option. So I'm going to slam the other side together. I probably will not be on again tonight, but tomorrow morning I will have the car dropped with the wheels on it, and we'll see how it looks. And we'll finish up and give some final thoughts. Thanks. All right, so we're back at the showroom. I did drive it to work today, although it is sitting extremely low, lower than it was before, so that's going to have to be addressed. It's probably about an inch or two lower than it was before. I did find a spanner wrench from a previous set of coilovers that I had on a different vehicle, and I'm going to see if I can get those to work to lift this up, because right now every time I try and take a turn, the wheel is catching on the inner fender. Pulled this down last night. I was able to push it back up, but needless to say, I don't want to blow out my tires, so I'm going to see if I can get it in the shop, lift up the front end, and see if those coilovers will work. All right, so it's been about a week since we last checked in. I was trying to adjust the coilovers. As you can see, they are all the way at the bottom, not able to get them up any higher by hand. So I had a coilover spanner wrench from a different set of inexpensive coilovers on a different vehicle, and I don't know how well that's going to focus, but as you can see, the tip of it just basically got all deformed and was starting to strip, and the shocks basically just stopped turning, or the coil spring seat, sorry. So I went ahead and I ordered the actual ones from QA1, and they just showed up a little bit ago. So again, what we're going to do is basically take these. One of them, there's two of them, because one of them is specifically for the spring seat and the other one is for the locking collar. So I'm just going to take those and adjust them upwards to essentially raise the spring seat higher on the shock body relative to its mounting points, which will then do a couple of things. One is it does set a little bit of preload on the springs. However, when you take the vehicle weight into consideration, I'm not going to be bringing this up to a point where I am doing more than what the vehicle's weight on this corner of the spring will do. Therefore, the spring will compress from a free weight position equal to what it was prior, irregardless of where I have this spring mounting. So for example, if this is say a 10-inch spring and the vehicle weight on this corner will compress it 3 inches, I might put 2 inches of preload on it. It'll still compress that last inch once the vehicle weight goes on it. If I have to do any more than that to get the vehicle where I would like for it to be seated, I might have to look into either a shorter spring or find another solution, but a shorter spring will probably be the easiest thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting that, and as you can see, we're basically all the way at the bottom. I think I was able to turn it a couple of times before that piece started stripping out. So I'm going to probably give myself about 2 or 3 inches off the bottom here. We'll throw the wheels back on. I'll do it on both sides. We'll throw the wheels back on and then kind of see where everything lands from there. So I will get that adjusted and check back in with you in a second. All right, so as you can see, I did get the shocks adjusted a little higher. I stopped at about 1 3/4 inches. I'm going to see how that goes and adjust it from there. So I've already got the wheels on both sides. Still have it up in the air. Go ahead and give it a drop. That's definitely a lot better than where we started. I'm sure this will settle a little bit. I don't expect it to completely drop, but I don't imagine it'll stay all the way that high. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but it's have to get away from the trash cans to get a little bit of a better idea. But it seems to sit a lot more even front to rear. The front probably could still come down a little bit, but I'm going to leave it there for now until I figure out what I'm going to do with everything. And since I'm going to have to fight to take the control arms back off to do the upper and lower tubulars eventually, probably just leave it like this and enjoy the ride. So thanks for joining me on this journey of swapping out to the front QA1 coilovers on my 70 Monte Carlo. I will be doing more of these, so if there's anything that you want me to see or change, I know one thing already, I would love to get some sort of an action camera with a tripod so that I could do you know, kind of time lapse of some of these odds and ends. Might make this video a little more interesting than just seeing all the steps as they're done rather than seeing them while they're done. So if there's anything else that you would like to see changed, just let me know in the comments below, and I will try and do them as best as possible. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.